it's Kim from Dodges and Daisies, and I just wanted to welcome you to my channel. Tonight we are having a special nighttime journaling session. I had a pretty good health day today. Anybody that follows along either on here or on Instagram knows that they can be far and few between. Whenever I have a good one, I kind of like to jump on it and do as much as I can. Tonight we are good to go. I'm so excited. I feel like I am sitting down with some good friends. I have some candles lit, and this candle is actually one of my favorites. Normally you guys just see this one lit, which is the candle I use most often. But today we also have this really beautiful antique teacup with dried roses and chamomile in it from Dear Miss Darcy. Amber is a really talented paper crafter, but also candle maker. So I will leave her information down below. That's one of my favorite things to do, is burn candles and journal. So tonight you guys are invited to a little journaling slumber party. We have a really special journaling prompt today, and that is the Myers-Briggs type indicator. I am so excited. I am doing a collaboration with Carrie, who is Warm Morning Sun on Instagram. She is just one of the nicest people that I've had the privilege to meet in the paper crafting community. Carrie is always somebody that reaches out to me whenever she sees that I'm going through a hard time. She's one of those people that, even though I only know her through the Instagram community and I've never met her in real life, I feel like we have formed a friendship that is, you know, deeper than a surface level acquaintance, because we've definitely had really long chats. And one of the things that we have talked about before is MBTI, which is Myers-Briggs type indicator. I'm sure there's a ton of you guys out there who already know your type, know everything about your type, but it might be new to some people, so I will kind of take you step by step on some of the basics of it. But it's just a really fun way to get to know yourself a little bit more. If you're in a relationship, get to know your partner a little bit more, your children, your friends, your parents. If you know people's types, it's actually really, really easy to kind of be able to communicate with them better, understand them better. If there's a disagreement or you're not kind of seeing eye to eye, if you know somebody's type and kind of the way they operate, the things they value, it's really easy, like, not to have a fight get heated or out of control, but kind of be able to say, like, okay, I know this type thinks this way, values this, operates in this way, and it actually really helps relationships a lot. My husband and I are both really, really into Myers-Briggs, and I have to say it's helped our marriage incredibly, because knowing each other's types, what our cognitive stacks are, and I'll explain that in a little bit, what makes each other tick, what we value, how we think, how we process. It's really been a great tool in our marriage, and it's helped quite a lot. First off, I just want to say which journal I'm using. I am starting a new rifle paper notebook. I really like the size of them. They're just a bit bigger. I use them for something called everyday books. Now, if anybody knows me, you know that I tend to use a large amount of journals, and they tend to have different functions. So we've been talking a lot about travel notebooks. I'm doing a local Carolina series travel notebook, and this notebook is all about just places I've been. There's photos from the day, there's stories from the day, pictures and ephemera, things that I've collected at the various places I've been. So we've talked a lot about travel notebooks, because I do a lot of them. I've also done a video on this notebook. I do think I'm going to spruce up the outside a little bit, just because it's become a very beloved notebook. This notebook, if you guys remember, is one where every page we did with the same layout. We did a vintage botanical cutout, we did a vintage stamp, and we did a figure drawing. And the point of this notebook was just to pour out my heart. It was just a place for brain dumps and feelings. And if anyone doesn't know what a brain dump is, it's a really great, just therapeutic tool when it comes to journaling, where you just kind of let everything free flow out of you. There's no judgment. There's no, is this thought good or bad, or is this feeling right or wrong? There's no justification. You just kind of allow yourself to get out your emotions. And I've kind of used this entire journal as a brain dump. I'm up to here. So you can see I've really been using it. And yeah, I just did a really simple layout on each page. This way, it's still an art journal, it's still a creative journal, it's still beautiful to look at, it's still a keepsake, I can stick it with my other art journals, but the goal of this one was writing. So we really were just kind of focused on decorating the sides of the pages and leaving a lot of space to write. Being so sick, being frustrated about not being kind of like on a treatment plan or with a correct diagnosis, being bedfast almost every day. I mean, you obviously can understand there's a lot of emotions that go on with that. I don't really feel like I have agency over my body or over my life anymore. I've dealt with chronic illness for most of my life, and I've had years that have been bedfast, but I've never been as ill as I've been this year. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into that. There's frustration, there's sadness, there's anger, there's confusion. And having a book like this that was just for those emotions, I didn't have to bounce them off of another person. There was no judgment, there was no filter, you know, just a place to kind of get things out has been a really healthy tool for me. It has kept me just calmer, happier, less angry, less bitter, just because I've had a place to kind of let those emotions out when I've needed to. And it's actually kept me happier and more grounded in general, just because I've had a release. So that's that book. I definitely do have some journals that are just a lot of writing. I have everyday books, and everyday books are just kind of what they sound like. They're just things that you use every day, and there's no rhyme or reason to them. I'm a big fan of these rifle paper notebooks. Like I said, I really enjoy the size. There's quite a lot to work with. Everyday books just are kind of whatever you want them to be. And I have to say that these journals are the journals that get finished the most for me. I have a separate place for my finished journals and a separate place for my journals in progress. My everyday books tend to be the ones that are most finished and stuck in the finished journal pile. And that's because they don't have a theme. They're just anything that you want to include that day. So this was from Cynthia of Jet's Synth Journals, and she had sent me, this is like a note from her and some happy mail from her. It was over the holidays, but I just included like ephemera from the mail, like her letter to me, and this little kind of like folder that she had sent me. I thought it was too pretty just to keep with my mail, so I decided to put it in a journal. But like there's things like that, like happy mail from friends, or we can see this is Christmas time. I saved like the stamps that I was using. I saved, you know, when you buy from a local artist or an Etsy artist, a lot of times they will put in extras or put in a little note, especially if they know you. So I'll do things like that. Yeah, this is a card. This was just a gift card. This stamp was just a special stamp for personal reasons. So you can do memory keeping, you can put in photos. This was Taylor Swift lyrics that I had really liked from one of her songs. So you can do kind of like a art journal, another kind of art journal page. You can do, this was like Halloween. I still have to fill this in. You can see how behind I am. Everyday books just are that. You can make full pages out of wrapping from an order that you've received. You can make full pages out of notes from loved ones. I put cards in here from family members and pen pals and friends. You can write down recipes that have been passed to you, you know, through your family, or favorite recipes that you have with your partner, or it's really whatever. An everyday book is whatever you feel like it to be. And because of that, I tend to finish these really easily and really quickly. They tend to get really thick and really fun. And yeah, they're just, you know, like this is a card from my mom, another gift card, a note from one of my pen pals. That's an everyday book. And I decided to start a new everyday book, even though I do have to finish that one up, just for fall 2022. I figured if I put a kind of date on this one and a limit on this one, it would help me just kind of stay creative, even if all I'm doing is working on just like one layout in bed and that's all I focus on. I figured this will kind of keep me creatively active if I try to do an everyday book just for this month. These rifled paper notebooks are kind of easy to fill. They're really not that thick. And yeah, I just wanted something to kind of keep me motivated and on track when I don't normally feel that way when I get this sick. So for this prompt, I did write out quite a bit about my type. You can see there's a lot here. And I just wrote it on like craft paper cardstock and just kind of wrote the things that I knew about my type. I'm really familiar with MBTI, so I didn't really have to like look it up too much, but you know, I did just like a basic, you know, search on it just to write down some wording about it. But for the most part, I'm pretty familiar with my type and what it means. And I just kind of thought, you know, because me and Carrie both have, you know, researched and studied MBTI, we're both familiar with what types we are, that this could just be a really fun prompt. She had reached out if I wanted to do a collaboration. I said definitely, and I suggested MBTI because it's something that we've both talked about and been interested in. I would like this to kind of look a little bit like a bullet journal, so I'm keeping things super simple. These rifled paper notebooks do have lined pages with little designs. I covered the pages I think I'll be using just with like ledger and graph paper, just because I wanted that kind of bullet journal feel. And I'm only using really limited supplies. So I'm just using from PaperMintyStudio. I bought some leaf stickers from her, some figure stickers from her, and some kind of like cozy Huga autumn weather stickers from her. Both of these washi tapes are also from her, and I will leave her information in the description below. I have, just in case I need them, because you guys know I do enjoy vintage stamps. We have just some fall colored vintage stamps in case I felt like I needed a little bit more of an embellishment. I do have a marker just in case I want to kind of highlight anything. I am going to just do the outline with this washi tape. And I just think that's going to give these pages a continuity, and we can tell that they're all going to be kind of part of the same spread. I did write quite a lot having to do with my type. You can get really deep into Myers-Briggs personality. You can do things very surfacey where you just kind of find out what type you are and like the basics that have to do with that and the basics of your personality. Or you can get really deep into it, to like how your brain functions and, you know, how you act when you're stressed out. And I mean, it goes deep. And yeah, I probably could have written even more, but I just tried to keep it basic. I also have some just vintage lace, just in case I want to spruce things up just a little bit. This was from Amy of Floshy Cottage. Most of these, some of these were my own finds, but most of these are from Amy. And I can leave her information in the description below as well. So the first thing I'm going to start off with is what the spread is about. It's the Myers-Briggs type indicator, and that is shortened to be MBTI. The type that I am is an ENFJ, and that stands for extroversion, intuitive, feeling, and judging. And I will describe what all of that means in a second. So as I glue these down, I'm going to start my little explanation of Myers-Briggs. So Myers-Briggs is a personality theory system. It is based on the work of Carl Jung, who was kind of like the godfather of personality theory. And then two other psychologists, Myers and Briggs, decided to expand on his theories and actually decided that everybody could fit into 16 distinct personalities. So I am an ENFJ. So everybody is going to fall into either an E or an I, that's extroversion or introversion. Extroversion just means you get your energy from an external source. You get your energy from other people, from other things, from sights, from experiences. You tend to be able to multitask. You tend to be able to do more than one thing at once, and you tend to get energy from being around other people. Introversion, you just tend to get more energy from yourself. You feel more built up and more energized when you're alone, when you're crafting, when you're, kind of just recharging by yourself without other people around. You also tend to like just doing one thing at a time instead of multitasking. Most people believe that most people are ambiverts. I tend to be a very introverted extrovert where I do need both time with others and time by myself. ENFJs in particular tend to be that way. We tend to be a little bit more introverted compared to other extroverts. We tend to be a bit more ambiverted because we put out so much energy when we're around other people. We actually need our alone time to kind of restore that. But for the most part, I do feel energized when I'm out, when I'm seeing things, I'm experiencing things. And even though I've gotten more introverted as I've gotten older, when I was younger, I just wanted to be around people 24/7. I've always enjoyed my alone time. I've always enjoyed my crafting time. I've always needed that downtime, but I really did just love being around people all the time. So that's the first letter, is E or I. The second letter is you are either an intuitive or a sensor, either an S for sensing or an N for intuitive. Intuitives, N types, tend to perceive the world kind of on a deeper level. Sensors tend to kind of look at the world as like what is in front of them. Sensors are very fact oriented. They're very grounded people. Like they see flowers, there's flowers there. Intuitives are more into like deeper meanings of things, patterns. Sensors can kind of live in the past, what happened in the past and what is happening in the present, where intuitives kind of are like, well, what can happen in the future and what's happening in the present. We tend to be a little bit more abstract in how we view things, where a sensor might see someone who's sad and they might think they're sad, how can I fix that problem? Intuitives are kind of more like, well, what made them sad? What's underlying the sadness? Is there thought patterns? Is there family history? Is there something that happened to them? We just kind of go on a bit of a deeper level, and I'm not meaning that to say anything bad about sensors, because sensors are like the kindest people. Sensors are the kind of people that, like, when you're having a bad day, they will bake you cookies and they will come over with those cookies. They will pay your grocery bill when you can't afford your groceries. They're fixers, they're nurses a lot of times. Sorry guys, there was a little break in the filming. I had filmed the entirety of this page and I had started on the second spread, and I didn't realize that my phone had actually run out of storage. That's what I get for trying to film multiple videos in a short amount of time. So I just had to empty some of it onto Dropbox. I'm back, and I apologize if things are a little disjointed, but welcome back to the craft slumber party. What I was saying about intuitives and sensors are, sensors tend to be people who will meet your needs. They're people who, if you come over, you're dealing with something, they're usually going to make you a hot meal, a hot cup of tea. Yes, they will talk to you, but they're really into meeting like physical needs that are right in front of them, things that they can see. If you are going to go to an intuitive over their house with a problem, they will still serve you a cup of tea, probably. They might even make you a meal. But what they're really going to be interested in is the underlying emotions, the depth of your problem. They're going to want to know your feelings, what's in your heart, your thoughts. Is there, any kind of underlying pattern or family history or a pattern of behavior you see in yourself? They're going to want to just kind of get a little bit deeper and underlying on the emotional aspect. Both of these types are kind, both of these types are good to talk to. A sensor you can have a deep conversation with. An intuitive can meet a physical need. Like I said, everybody has both. Sensors just tend to be a little bit more what is there, what is fact, what is in front of them, how they can physically meet a need. An intuitive is going to be a little bit more what's underlying, what's emotional, what's the pattern that they see. How can they kind of figure somebody out and figure out what can happen in the future. Feeling or thinking is the next letter, so you're either an F or a T. Feelers can think. They are not people who are without logic, but they tend to make their decisions, this is the decision making, on emotional reasons. What is going to be their core values? What do they feel emotionally? What do they feel like would benefit other people emotionally, society emotionally, an individual emotionally? They're going to make decisions based on their feelings. Thinkers are more people that are going to make decisions based on logic, what logically makes sense. Last is judging and perceiving. Judging doesn't mean that you're judgmental, it just means that you're more of a planner. You enjoy kind of planning, knowing things ahead of time. I tend to like to make lists, be very prepared. If I'm going home to New York, I tend to start packing 2 weeks in advance. I definitely have a bit of a P or perceiving personality at times where I am somebody that does like to be spontaneous. I do like to not have a plan for the day. I do like to, perceiving types are just more spontaneous people, more go with the flow people. They tend to not like to be held down or constricted or, too planned out. I definitely have a bit of spontaneity to me. I can definitely enjoy unplanned things, but again, everybody has both. It's just kind of what you lean toward mostly, what your preference is. I'm definitely higher in judging than perceiving, where I do like my lists, I do like my plans. I tend to like to be a bit more organized and prepared for things. The wonderful thing about Myers-Briggs, and I don't even know how this happened or how they did it, but not only do you kind of get to know what your personality is, but each personality is like scarily accurate to like what you are. And if you take the test, you can take a Myers-Briggs test on, you can either Google Myers-Briggs, there's a website called 16 Personalities. It's a little less accurate, but it's basically like the idea of Myers-Briggs. You can go to something called Cloverleaf, but you can take the test. You can take like a Jungian personality test. My suggestion would be, if what you read when you read your personality doesn't kind of line up with what you feel like is you in your heart, you're probably mistyped. You're probably just off by one letter. I would suggest either taking the test again or going to a different website and seeing what that website says. Because when you do get the accurate 4 letters, it's scarily accurate to your personality, like just how true it rings. And I remember the first time I took the test, and I've taken the test multiple times throughout my life, it was like somebody had just seen into my soul. It was the most bizarre thing. My strengths were my strengths, my weaknesses were my weaknesses. Like things I struggled with were just accurate. Like it is just the most accurate test, and it's bizarre. It's just weird. That's all I can say. It's why I became a believer of it really early on, and why I find it really helpful. And it's really helpful not just to understand yourself, but also to understand, people around you. If you have a spouse or a partner, a parent, a child, a friend, it's just really helpful to understand them, to understand their strengths, their weaknesses, what makes them tick, how they perceive the world. Are they judgers or perceivers? Are they intuitives or are they sensing? Do they get their energy from others? Do they get their energy from themselves? Do they make decisions leading with feeling or thinking? There's no right or wrong or better or worse personality, but it just helps to understand people and where they're coming from and kind of what makes them tick. And the great thing about Myers-Briggs, it does highlight both your strengths and your weaknesses, and It also helps you understand how you think and about the world and take in the world, how you act when you're stressed, things to look out for. When you're stressed, there's something called shadow functions that you can fall into if you're an unhealthy version of your type, or how you act if you're a healthy version of your type. And none of these things are meant in a judgmental way. They're meant to help us and just help us kind of, keep an eye out for how we can improve. So one thing that I did write down was the strengths of the ENFJ. And I think it's really important that we don't just focus on negatives, that we focus on positives too. So we can be really hard on ourselves, we can be really critical, we're our own worst enemies. A lot of times nobody is meaner to ourselves than we are, right? So one of the things I love about Myers-Briggs is it does really let you know like the positives of your personality. So I think making a page, if you guys are going to do this challenge along with me and Carrie, of your strengths as well as your weaknesses is a really great way to start. I'm sure both of our spreads are going to look very different. I'm choosing just a really simple and easy, like I said, bullet journal type of spread, just because, I don't have that much energy or strength, and I really never know when I can or can't craft. So to me, I wanted to keep things simple. But, Carrie's incredibly creative. I have no doubt that her page is going to look very different than mine and just be really extravagant and dreamy. And so however you tend to do this, that's okay. So I started off with what the page was about, my type, what my type meant, extroverted, intuitive, feeling, judging, and then I did a strengths and a weaknesses page. So really, like I said, great idea to focus on your strengths. Be honest about what's good about you and your personality. ENFJs are affectionate, encouraging, we're persuasive, we're empathetic, we're organized, we tend to be warm, affectionate, and supportive, we're great at encouraging others, we derive personal satisfaction from helping others. My personality type tends to be very externally focused, very wanting to be helpful, very in tune with other people's emotions and bringing out the best in them, helping them through hard times. We're kind of like counselors and encouragers and teachers. And I think that recognizing the good parts about you is good and is healthy. So I continued here. We had already planned out our pages, glued down our words. I haven't decorated it just yet, but we can do that together as I keep talking. I wrote a few more things, a few more positive things about the ENFJ type on this side. We're called the mentor or the protagonist. We are outgoing and warm-hearted. We tend to be the more introverted of the extroverts. We tend to expend so much energy when we're around other people because we try to help them. We're incredibly empathetic. So if you're sad, we feel sad. If you're happy, we feel happy. If you have a problem, we want to help you solve the problem. We can listen to you for hours. We can counsel people for hours. Because of that, we kind of exert a lot of energy around other people. And so we actually, like introverts, do need that alone time to kind of recharge and rebuild before kind of going out and expending energy again. So myself in particular, the older I've gotten, the more introverted I've gotten. As I've said before, a lot of people do believe that everyone is kind of more of an ambivert, which means that you have both tendencies of extroversion and introversion, that it's really rare for someone to be kind of an extreme of either. We both have moments where we enjoy being around others and moments where, we kind of need our alone time to recharge, but it's kind of just your preference. Where do you, for the most part, derive your energy from? Is it externally or internally? And for the most part, ENFJs, we do derive our energy from other people, from external sights and sounds and experiences, but we also do need that downtime. I did famous ENFJs just because that's fun. You can Google these things, you can find fictional characters that are your type, real people that are your type. You'll see an overlap because a lot of this is just people's opinions, especially when it comes to fictional characters, but a lot of times real people have actually been typed, and it's just fun to find it, what famous people have your type. So some famous ENFJs are Oprah Winfrey, Nelson Mandela, Bono, and Martin Luther King Jr. I happen to be pretty proud of that list. I think that's a pretty cool list. One thing though that I had said that didn't record was another great thing about MBTI is it also lets you know your weaknesses. It lets you know what you're susceptible to in your type, and also kind of if you're unhealthy or under stress, like what you can kind of expect to act like. And again, scarily accurate. If you're not finding accuracy in those types of things, I would suggest just retesting and making sure that you've kind of gotten the right type. Weaknesses are hard to acknowledge, but the whole point of this is not just to build ourselves up and say, oh, look at all these great things about our personality type, but it's really, really helpful to be honest about our weaknesses, not so we stay there, not so we use them as an excuse to just be like, oh, I'm an ENFJ, so, I can neglect my own needs. That's just how I am. No. One of the great things about Myers-Briggs is that it encourages us to become better versions of ourselves, to introspectively look at ourselves, not only the good things about us, but the bad things about us. And this isn't to make us feel bad, it's so we can grow. It's so we can flex those muscles that are not easy for our personalities to flex. It's so introverted people can work on being a little bit more extroverted. Extroverted people can work on being a little bit more introverted. It's not to change who we are, but it's just to become a more well-rounded person, a more mature version of ourselves. So writing these weaknesses was difficult, I won't lie. It's always hard to, look at your weaknesses. One is overly sensitive because we are so people focused. We definitely can be oversensitive. We lead with something called extroverted feeling. So our main cognitive function is extroverted feeling. It's how others are feeling. We're very empathetic. We pick up on others' emotions. We, want approval from other people. We can neglect our own needs. We can be hard on ourselves. We can be self-sacrificing. So that FE, that extroverted feeling, really can be a wonderful thing when it comes to empathy, but it can also be a tough thing when we're taking things too personally, when we're seeking approval of people, when we're neglecting our own needs, when we're overthinking and being too hard on ourselves. Did we say the right thing? Did we do the right thing? Or when we're too self-sacrificing. Thankfully, I've found that the older I've gotten, I've kind of gotten better with the ENFJ weaknesses. So when I was younger, approval seeking was a really big weakness for me. It just was. It was something that I really struggled with. But the older I've gotten, the more kind of comfortable in my own skin I've become. I'm okay if somebody doesn't like me, where like when I was younger, God, that was like that was the worst fate in the world. I'm okay being quirky. I'm okay being artistic and a little weird. I'm okay, showing people the kind of niche or not mainstream things about me, like junk journaling or different kinds of art like snail mailing. When I was younger, those things would have terrified me to ever show somebody that I was interested in things that weren't maybe mainstream. But the older I've gotten, the more I'm just kind of okay being me. I think that's really cool. I think that the older I've gotten, the less I've needed approval from other people, the more I've just gotten it from myself, which it's more, am I living up to my own moral code? Am I living up to what I believe in my heart is right has become more important than, is this okay with others? And that's the great thing about Myers-Briggs, is you can become a more mature version of your personality type. You can understand your weaknesses and work on them and develop into a more well-rounded person. And I just think that's awesome. The neglecting your own needs, the self-sacrificing, there's, I think, a lot of types that can fall into that. I think that's really, really easy for anybody who's empathetic or, has that extroverted feeling. So ENFJs, INFJs, ESFJs, ISFJs, there's certain types that I think are a bit more caretakery or a bit more externally focused, that I think we can tend to neglect our own needs maybe a little bit more than other types. But again, if we kind of can understand that about our base personality, we don't have to stay there. We can realize that if we are pouring from an empty cup, we're really not doing a service to other people. So taking care of ourselves, putting ourselves first sometimes, making sure that we are practicing self-care and self-love. If we have our own cups full, it'll be so much easier to pour into other people and be more patient with them, more loving with them, be easier on them, have more grace on them if we're having more grace on ourselves. So these weaknesses, yeah, they were difficult to write, they were difficult to acknowledge, but at the same time, I was happy to see that I'm not where I used to be in my life. Like, I'm not who I was like as a teenager or who I was in my early 20s. I'm somebody that's grown and changed and matured as time has gone on, and that's a really exciting thing. At least I think so. I think it's really exciting when we can see that we've grown. I've come to the end of the journaling that I've done, and it didn't take up the full 6 pages. So we have this, and by the way, this is what each page will look like when I'm done with it. We have this like overview, strengths, a little bit more of an overview, weaknesses, and then I did a little bit of a deep dive into something called your cognitive stack on this page. So if you guys are joining me and Carrie, like I said, by the way, Carrie is an ENTJ. She is only 1 letter away from me, but the difference between an F and a T is huge. It's so funny how you can just be 1 letter off from someone. My husband is an INFJ. Again, just 1 letter off, E to I. The difference between us is huge. It's really, really funny just how 1 single letter can make your personality very different. But if you do follow the prompt with me and Carrie, these are just some things that you might want to put in your own journal page. What is your type called? What are some famous people that have your type, or some fictional characters that have your type? What are weaknesses that you identify with, or maybe that you've overcome? What are strengths that you identify with? What are, normally the strengths found in your type? What does your type stand for? Hi friends, and welcome back. I'm so sorry, it cut off yet again. I think there's some kind of lesson to be learned here. I tend to stretch my body to its absolute limits every time I feel healthy, and my energy reserve gets depleted pretty quickly the next day. It's just really funny how I tried to film 3 videos today and my phone kept getting full, the storage kept failing on me. It's almost like the storage in my body kept failing and the phone kept failing, so I think it's a sign that I just need to be a little bit more gentler and take things at a little bit of a slower pace. Anyway, we are picking up now for the 3rd time. I'm all finished with this spread. As I was saying right before we left off, this page was a cognitive stack. If you want to get more into MBTI, like take a really deep dive, I would suggest looking up your cognitive stack and understanding what that means. You'll have a dominant, auxiliary, tertiary, and inferior function. When you're stressed out, your first function will kind of get into overdrive. Your inferior function tends to shut down and really doesn't get used all that much. I think that this is one of the most helpful things about MBTI. There's a great YouTuber out there called Frank James. I will leave his info in the description below. Not only does he have a lot of really deep videos about MBTI, and he definitely has one about a cognitive stack, what it means, starting to understand it, but he also has comedy sketches, which are really funny if you can kind of laugh at yourself and laugh at your type. So if you guys really are into this, wanting to learn more about it, more about yourself, cognitive sec is basically just how you function, how you think, how you perceive, what you lead with, the decisions that you make, what they're led with. It's just really good to know. So I will leave Frank James's info in the description. The last 2 pages, I just talked about the cognitive stack. I also did a little bit of personal journaling, just what it means to be an ENFJ to me. Also some things that I kind of fell into as a younger person, kind of classic ENFJ weaknesses and struggles, and just how as I've gotten older and matured and developed, how there are certain things that don't seem to affect me like they used to. This could also be a really good idea for an MBTI page because it's nice to kind of look back and see how you've grown. Since my phone died, I did do the cover page for this everyday book. I made sure it just said fall 2022 because I really want to give myself incentive to create, even if it's just a little bit every day. So that's my cover page. Those are my first 2 pages. I did fill in little doodles of stars with gold marker. I just felt like that made it look a little bit more full and just fun. This is my second page. And the third and last page, I did add some vintage lace to just a few of the pages, even though this is a really simple spread, really just kind of bullet journaling. I felt like the lace just added a little bit extra. We are doing this challenge starting Monday the 10th of October. It is me and Carrie of Warm Morning Sun. We are challenging all of you to do journal spreads with your own MBTI personality, what it means to you. If you are okay sharing your type with me, I would absolutely love it. I find it so interesting. So if you guys want to write in the comments, INFJ, ESTJ, INFP. We can see if we have any duplicates, if we have any people who are the same types as us. I'm super interested to find out. You can leave those in the comments below. We are going to do a random giveaway, so anybody that participates in this contest will be automatically entered to win a Happy Meal package from Carrie. At this point, I'm just a little too sick to make up my own, but she was really gracious and decided to make up a Happy Meal pack for a random draw. She makes up really beautiful giveaways. You don't want to miss this. We are going to be sharing all the entries in our stories. So if you want your spread to be kind of promoted on both of our pages, just tag us. We will have a hashtag, which I will also leave in the description below. All right, I hope you guys have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. I hope that you enjoyed this little slumber party, lighting candles, talking, creating, making homemade hot chocolate. I just hope that this is a warm, cozy Huga experience for you. I certainly enjoyed every moment spent. And yeah, if you like this content, please subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and definitely leave your MBTI type in the comments. Have a wonderful night. Sending you guys my love.